All right, let's do this. Today, we're diving deep into the PlayStation, the original one.
Right.
We're going to see how it went from, a failed partnership to becoming this absolute gaming giant.
Mm-hmm.
And our main source for this deep dive is this really cool article from VGC that's Video Games Chronicle.
Okay.
And it's titled PlayStation at 30, The Betrayal and Revenge Story of the PS1.
Ooh, betrayal and revenge.
I know, right? Sounds juicy. So get this. The story actually begins not with some, big triumphant moment,
Right.
but with this kind of quiet, almost like failed collaboration
Was it
between
with-
Sony and Nintendo.
Oh, wow. Those two working together. Hard to imagine that now.
I know, right. But back in 1991, things were different.
Okay.
At that year's Consumer Electronics Show, Sony was all set to, unveil this thing called the SNES PlayStation.
The SNES PlayStation.
Yeah, it was a CD add-on that they'd developed with
Right.
Nintendo.
It was like a team effort.
It was. On the surface, it seemed like a pretty sweet deal for both of them.
Yeah. I mean, Sony was new to the gaming scene back then, right?
Totally.
So this would be like their way in.
Exactly. And for Nintendo, well, they were going to get their hands on this, cutting-edge CD technology.
Yeah, CDs were the future back then.
Big time. But here comes the plot twist.
Uh-oh.
In a move that, totally shocked the industry, Nintendo went and announced a deal with Philips instead.
What? Seriously?
Yeah. Talk about a public diss, right? I mean, to just ditch Sony like that.
Brutal.
And get this, the article actually quotes someone saying that Nintendo wanted to gracefully fluff Sony.
Whoa. Okay, strong words.
Tell me about it. I mean, even with the colorful language,
Right.
you could just feel the, intensity of the situation.
Yeah. Nintendo was probably scared of, losing control of their
Definitely.
software, and they probably saw Sony as, a potential threat.
Yeah, a competitor in the making.
Exactly.
I bet that rejection really stung for Sony.
I mean, yeah, you'd think it would have been enough to, make them just give up on gaming entirely. Right.
But it actually did the opposite. It
Oh.
kind of lit a fire under them.
Like fueled their determination.
Exactly. It became their driving force, this whole we'll show them kind of thing.
So they were like, all right, fine. We'll do it ourselves.
Pretty much.
Kitty.
They were determined to enter the gaming market, but on their own terms this time.
Now, that's what I call a revenge story.
Mhm.
But I'm guessing, their path to creating the PlayStation wasn't exactly easy.
Yeah, it wasn't all sunshine and roses.
What kind of hurdles did they face?
Well, first off, there was a lot of resistance from within Sony itself.
Really? Why?
Back then, a lot of people, even within Sony, saw video games as, just toys.
Oh, interesting.
So trying to convince the bigwigs, the higher-ups,
Yeah.
that this was a legitimate market, a market worth investing in,
Yeah.
that was a huge challenge.
So how'd they deal with that? Did they just, power through?
Well, instead of, forcing the issue,
Right.
they made a pretty strategic move.
They shifted the whole PlayStation project over to, wait for it,
So?
Sony Music.
Sony Music?
Yep.
I gotta admit, that sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Right. Why would you hand your gaming console project to the music department?
Exactly. It's what?
Well, think about it. This was the era of CDs.
True.
And Sony Music was at the top of their game back then.
Yeah.
They knew how to, manage talent, which in this case would be the game developers.
Makes sense.
And they had the infrastructure to, mass produce those discs.
So they had the resources and the expertise.
Exactly. And that would prove to be super crucial later on.
Okay. Starting to see the logic there.
Right.
So they take this, betrayal from Nintendo and use it as fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Then they kind of sidestep the internal resistance by, cleverly using their music division.
Pretty smart move so far, right?
Totally. But, how do they actually overcome Nintendo's dominance in the market? Because, Nintendo was, the king back then.
You're huge.
Everyone had a Nintendo.
Yeah, and Nintendo was known for, controlling every little thing, every aspect of, game development and distribution.
So they had a tight grip on the whole process.
Oh, yeah. And that was starting to cause some friction with developers.
Because?
Well, developers are creative people, They want to create, they don't want to be, micromanaged.
Right. They need freedom to, express their vision.
Exactly. And Sony saw this as their opportunity.
So, swoop in.
Yeah. They built this whole sales team that was focused on giving developers more freedom.
Interesting. So they were like the cool parents.
Kinda. They offered developers faster certification processes,
Okay.
better royalty rates, which
Yeah.
meant, a bigger cut of the profits for the developers.
Oh, so they were making it more financially attractive for developers.
Exactly. And they gave developers more say in how their games were marketed and distributed.
So basically they were saying, come to us, we'll treat you better.
Basically. They positioned themselves as the, developer-friendly alternative to Nintendo's more rigid system.
Smart.
It was...
And it worked.
Oh, it worked. This approach attracted some major developers like Namco.
The Namco, the ones behind Pac-Man.
Yeah, and they brought with them some iconic games. Ridge Racer and Tekken, which became, synonymous with the PlayStation experience.
Ah, I remember those.
These early wins were so crucial in establishing Sony as a real contender in the gaming world.
They were like, hey, we're here to stay.
Yeah. So, they had the drive, the infrastructure, the developers.
The whole package.
The launch, right. The moment of truth.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's where things get even more interesting.
Okay, so last time we left off with Sony, right on the edge, ready to launch the PlayStation in the West, head-to-head with the Sega Saturn.
Yeah, the stakes were high.
Yeah.
Everyone wanted a piece of that gaming pie.
For sure. So what happened next? Did they just, release it and hope for the best?
Well, Sega actually, they pulled a fast one.
Ooh.
They kind of surprise launched the Saturn a few months early.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, it caught a lot of people off guard.
I bet. Including Sony, right?
Especially Sony. So they had to come up with a response, and fast.
Yeah. I mean, how do you top a surprise launch like that?
Well, they chose the biggest stage in gaming to make their move.
What, a huge press conference or something?
Even bigger. E3 1995.
Ah, E3. Legendary.
I know, right? So picture this. Sega's just announced the Saturn's price tag.
Okay.
A pretty hefty $399.
Oof. That's a chunk of change.
It was. And everyone's on the edge of their seats waiting to see what Sony's going to do.
Yeah, the tension must have been crazy.
Oh, it was palpable. You could practically cut it with a controller. So the next day, it's Sony's turn at the podium.
Okay, their moment to shine.
And let me tell you, it was a nail-biter. They spent a lot of time talking about, technical specs and stuff.
Which, let's be honest, can be kind of boring.
Yeah, not exactly the most captivating stuff for the average gamer.
But then, this guy, Steve Race, walks up to the mic.
Who's Steve Race?
He was this former Sega and Nintendo exec.
Wait, he used to work for the competition.
Yep. Known for being kind of, aggressive.
Oh, that's juicy. So what did he do?
He gets up there, looks at the crowd, and says, quote, $299.
No way.
And then just like that, he walks off.
Seriously. That's it. Just the price and he's out of there.
Yeah. Like a total mic drop moment.
Wow. That is a power move, undercutting the competition like that.
It sent shockwaves through the industry. I mean, imagine being in that crowd.
I bet people lost their minds.
It went absolutely nuts. It was this clear message, that Sony was serious, taking on Sega, winning over the West. They weren't messing around.
But it wasn't just about the price war, right?
Yeah.
I remember the PlayStation marketing being so different back then.
You're right, it was. They were targeting a more mature audience.
Which was new, right?
Yeah.
Before that, it was all about kids.
Yeah, pretty much. But Sony, they used licensed music in their ads. They sponsored events at nightclubs.
Nightclubs. For a video game console.
I know, right? It was this whole vibe, the PlayStation was cool, edgy for grown-ups.
It's funny. Back then, I just thought the ads were cool.
Right.
But now I realize, how strategic that was.
It totally was.
They were like, hey, we're not competing for the same kids as Nintendo and Sega. We're going after a whole new market.
Exactly. And that was brilliant. It paid off big time, too. The PlayStation became this cultural phenomenon. People wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah. It wasn't just a console. It was like a lifestyle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the end, how did this whole console war shake out?
Yeah. Who came out on top?
Well, let's just say the PlayStation dominated. Over 100 million units sold, absolutely crushing the competition.
Wow. That's insane. But it wasn't just about the sales numbers, right?
Right. It was about the impact. The PlayStation changed everything.
Like what? How did it change gaming?
Well, for one, the shift to CD-ROM technology.
CDs. Remember those clunky cartridges? Always blowing on them, trying to get them to work.
Yeah. CDs were a huge leap forward. More storage space meant bigger, more complex games.
Think about Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, yeah.
That epic story, that huge world, those incredible cutscenes.
None of that would have been possible on a cartridge.
Right. CDs opened up a whole new world for developers, right?
Totally. They could be more creative, more ambitious.
And Sony, they encouraged that, didn't they?
They did. They were like, push the boundaries, experiment, create something amazing.
And it worked. It totally paid off. So the PlayStation wasn't just a console. It was like a catalyst for a whole new era of gaming.
Yeah, cinematic storytelling, huge open worlds, innovative gameplay, all thanks to the CD-ROM and Sony's vision.
It really changed how we experience games. And it brought people together too, right?
Yeah, I mean, think about all the friendships, all the rivalries, all those late nights playing games with your buddies. It created a whole new culture around gaming.
You're right. It wasn't just about playing anymore. It was about sharing those experiences. I have so many memories of like staying up all night trying to beat a game with my friends, arguing over who was the best at Tekken. It was a special time.
It was. The PlayStation was more than just a console. It was like a cultural touchstone.
Yeah, a symbol of a whole generation.
And that's something worth celebrating, don't you think?
Absolutely. And speaking of celebrating, we're going to continue this party in part 3.
Yeah. We'll dive even deeper into the legacy of the PlayStation.
And how its success, shaped the gaming world we know and love today.
It's going to be awesome.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, we're back and ready to wrap up this PlayStation deep dive.
It's mind-blowing to think about how one company, getting kind of screwed over led to this massive shift in gaming.
Yeah, like who knew that Betrayal could birth something so iconic?
Right. It makes you wonder, what if Nintendo had stuck with that deal?
Would we even have the PlayStation as we know it today?
Right. It's like a total what-if moment in gaming history.
Totally. But one thing's for sure. Sony's, resilience and vision, man, they were key in shaping everything.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the most important part of this whole deep dive.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
You, our amazing listeners.
Oh, right.
We've talked about the history, the marketing battles, the tech stuff.
Yeah.
But what we really want to know is, how did the PlayStation change your gaming experience?
Good question.
Think back to those early PlayStation days.
Yeah.
The games that, blew your mind, the stories that stuck with you, those moments you shared with friends.
All those late-night gaming sessions.
Exactly. Did the PlayStation, ignite a passion for gaming that you still have today?
That's a powerful thought.
For me, man, the PlayStation was a total game changer.
In what way?
It wasn't just about playing games anymore. It was about experiencing them,
I feel that.
Games like Metal Gear Solid
Classic.
and Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
They showed me that video games could be art. They could tell stories that were just as powerful and moving as any movie or book out there.
And that's the magic of gaming, right?
It is. It can transport us to other worlds, challenge our thinking, and connect us with people in ways we never thought possible.
I mean, the PlayStation played a huge role in that.
It did. With its innovative tech, its risk-taking spirit, and its focus on, letting developers be creative and free.
Sony really paved the way.
They did. So next time you grab your controller, whether it's a PlayStation or something else, take a second to appreciate the legacy of that original gray box,
That's a great point.
It's a story of ambition, resilience, and turning a bad situation into something amazing.
And it reminds us that sometimes the greatest things come from the most unexpected places.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep playing, and keep asking those awesome, thought-provoking questions.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this PlayStation journey. It's been a blast.
Until next time, game on.